In the last couple of weeks, I've had quite intimate exposure to what can go wrong in the boardroom from a PR crisis perspective. And it can often occur from the most mundane of comments or the most minuscule of activity, and it can suddenly flare up and create quite a headache for the board in terms of how to handle a PR crisis, who's going to take charge, how you're going to operate, and how you can try and correct possibly misinformation in the market. We had a situation on a board that I'm on where there was a misinformation, very significant misinformation, published in mainstream media, and it involved a incorrect position on the finances of the organisation, and it was so far off base it wasn't funny. So it was really quite a serious matter, and this had come about by the CEO giving a very mundane sort of interview, and this comment wasn't actually relayed to the board, and then all of a sudden we've got mainstream media all over the place reporting incorrect news. And it took quite a bit for the board to get that matter under control, and what was sort of highlighted to me was that it's really crucial that you have a proper game plan in place for a crisis. At some point you're going to face some sort of PR crisis, whether that be on social media, whether that be in the press, whether it be a whispering campaign, whether it be something that's going to flare up. And the nature of social media these days is bad news can spread very, very quickly. It can be shared multiple times, and it's really hard to correct an incorrect message. So you really do have to have a game plan, and it's not enough to just assume that it's going to be yesterday's news tomorrow, that it's going to be yesterday's fish and chip wrapper. The reality is that with the nature of social media, the footprint is there. It's very hard to get articles taken down. It's very hard to get articles corrected. It's critical that in the first 12, 24 hours of some sort of a PR crisis, being undertaken, that you've got a very clear strategy to correct an incorrect message. And, it's absolutely crucial that your CEO or your chosen spokesperson for the organisation has media training and is able to very clearly, very succinctly get a key message across, particularly if you're trying to correct a narrative. And, you do need, I believe, a sort of a set of people within the boardroom, a committee, if you like, that are on call who can help navigate and coordinate a crisis. It's important that not everyone's sort of trying to put in their two bobs worth, that everybody is coordinated though and the board is of one voice, but that you have a very clear mechanism for setting up the crisis management of a situation. And it may require the chair or other board members stepping in to try and correct a message and make sure key stakeholders are given the facts. Sometimes you've got to arm your stakeholders with the correct way to handle things, because often what happens is the media will contact anyone and everyone. So when a story starts to gain some momentum, don't assume they're going to call your head office. Don't assume they're going to call exactly who you want them to call. They're likely to call someone out in the trenches, someone out in the field, someone out in your stakeholder group to source a comment. And these people may not be armed with all the facts. They may not be armed with the correct way to handle the situation, and they may have very limited media training. So it's crucial that when you're in a crisis that you've got a media strategy, a communication strategy for how you're going to manage your stakeholders, to get them on board with the situation, for them to understand what the crisis is, to understand what the key messages now are, to understand who is going to try and handle the situation going forward, so that they can direct media inquiries to the correct people to try and navigate the situation. So all in all, it's been a little bit of an eye-opener. I would say our particular board was maybe a little bit underprepared for this scenario. I think a lot of boards are. In reality, it comes up, quite frequently now. We've seen seen social media matters take off, very adverse press take off against organisations, and you do have to have a clear strategy for how you're going to handle that. And I think you need to be monitoring media quite regularly as well, and just seeing what sort of news and commentary is coming up. And certainly your core spokespeople do need to have some form of formal media training to know how to handle media in a crisis, but also just in general, speaking to the media, how to frame information, how to sort of research the journalist before you embark on an interview. All those things are very important. So certainly as a board, one of the questions you should be asking is, what is our crisis communication plan? What does our disaster plan look like? What happens if there's this scenario in the media? Who would handle this? Who's on the committee to handle it? Who would be the main points of contact? You need to just get that clarity around those matters so that you're armed with the right information and the right materials to handle the situation and navigate those scenarios that can often crop up in the media.